How do you recruit and retain great staff? What does great culture look like? How do you have difficult conversations? The Supporting Leaders podcast connects with leaders in the field to gain insights into these leadership challenges and beyond. Enjoy the show. This next interview with Josh McLindsay was another interview that was incredibly fun to do. Josh is somebody that I have known for a very long time, and watching his career journey in retail, management, working with Nike has just been a blast to follow. And so it was great to have an opportunity to connect with him and pick his brain a little bit more about some of the exciting things that he's done in his career and how he's got to where he's at. So let me tell you a little bit more about Josh. He's worked in retail for 23 years and has been a leader of a team for 10 of those years. He has a degree in management and leadership. He's aided not only in his success in leading teams from 2 to 50 plus, but also being a mentor and learning how to manage upwards in large matrix style organizations. Through his professional career, he's had roles in inventory management, merchandise planning, project management, demand planning, and assort planning. Josh has worked at past and present Fortune 500 companies like Gap, Ulta, Sears, Groupon, and more recently in his current role with Nike Inc. So you'll hear some really fun stories from Josh about his current role and some of his previous roles, and I think you'll learn a lot from him. So enjoy this next episode with Josh McLindsay. So Josh McLindsay is with us today. And Josh, I just appreciate you being on the show. As people may or may not know, we have a connection from way back in the day. We both grew up in the same area, and Josh, you started dating one of my friends way back in the day. How young were you and Katie when you first started dating?
When I think about it and when I tell people, they're like, so you met in the maternity ward? Is that right? That's about how long it was ago. But we started dating in high school. So back in 1999. So long time ago, but it's been a great journey. So yeah, this fall will be 22 years.
Wow, that is pretty incredible. So so that's our 6 degrees or 1 degree of Lisa and Josh and how we know each other. But
Yep.
From an outsider looking in on your career, Josh, it has been a really cool journey to follow. So for those of you, or those of us listening who don't know anything about your career journey, take us on this journey of where you started and where you're at now.
Sure. Yeah. And like you said, we both grew up in the same area, Rock Falls, Illinois. So just growing up there, working at the family business and playing basketball, and just kind of like basketball is my passion. And of course, growing up where we did, being outside of Chicago, the Chicago Bulls, and the guy right behind me, for those of you who could see, is Michael Jordan. Being a big fan of his, like that was all I ever thought about. Like we all the time, watch as much videos as we could, play the video games, wear the shoes, everything. And somehow along the way, you start to get into, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? I really never had a clue. I always thought I would work at the family business, at the flower shop, or maybe start my own small business, but I didn't really have a clue. And so when we were in school to Chicago, and the high school that I was at in Rock Falls, I had more credits to carry with me into the new high school. And so part of that career journey started right then, as they said, well, you could either have half the day off or you could go and get a job somewhere. And at the time I was like, well, I might as well just go and get a job somewhere. And I really wasn't going to do that at the time, because I'm like, heck, I can have a couple hours off, kind of just mess around, go home, do whatever I wanted to, right? And that same week, I broke my thumb playing basketball, no longer could play basketball for the team. And that's what led me to, well, I guess I'm going to go get a job, make some money, and do that. And my job at the time was at the local outlet mall, and it was at a Gap store. And I just thought, my mom works at the outlet mall. I'll go there too. It's not far from the house. I'll get work credits. Why not? And it was there when I met Megan. And Megan was the manager at the Gap store. And she saw early on that like I actually can do this job really well. And for me, I was like, I just want the gas money and the credits. Like, it's not a big deal. But she really connected dots for me from what I learned early on in my days of working at the family business. And just from like my natural passion for wanting to interact with the consumer, try and just make them happy. I hated the idea of sales. And she's like, it's not sales, it's just customer service. You try and ask them questions, try and solve their issue. And if we have it, great. If not, then you try and direct them to where that might. And then that helped me also get over my whole thing of, I don't like sales. Well, it's not. And so she kind of did a lot of little tweaks like that to help me do that. And then from there, it kind of snowballed into, I think I have a career in retail. And then she also set me up with a manager role at a Banana Republic store. And about 6 months after we opened, we got a corporate visit. And when they came in, the lead store manager that we had at the time was not there for that afternoon, because it was one of those kind of surprise visit things. And I had gotten recognized by them for being just really well prepared. The store looked great. I could easily speak to the performance of the store, but back it up with numbers. And they're like, yeah, you should really work at the corporate office. Like, you don't, unless you want to run a store or do something like that. And then it's Megan again that said, I mean, you could definitely do that. They have a program that helps with that. You just need your bachelor's degree, which I didn't have at the time. So I went back and got that, and I ended up getting the job at Gap Inc. And then that started my whole career into retail, to where I'm at today. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay. There's so many things that I want to ask you just in that, in that little blurb there. So it sounds like Megan, her role in your, what came next for you was really critical. Would you agree that having Megan there for you was an important part of what came next?
Absolutely. She was the very first person that for me was a mentor when at like 17 going into 18. I wasn't thinking about a mentor. It was just, she's my boss and yes, I'll do what she says. But then she was very quickly one of those people that she's used to as a store manager in a mall like that. She's used to dealing with 16-year-olds up to 40, 50-year-olds that just need a job for many different reasons. But she knew how to connect with each and every one of us individually. And she was very good about knowing where I am in my career. I just need the credits and gas money, where she thinks I can go, and then helping to slowly foster that relationship. So she was the first one that I ever had outside of, other friends and family that were close to me, that really knew how to tap into, I think there's more here. Let me help you get there without being overbearing. And she was very instrumental. And I didn't even realize that until maybe years later of thinking back and trying to, as I'm talking through it with you too, of just saying, yeah, she actually did a lot in that term of just the few years that I overlapped with working with her. And she was a really great connection for that purpose.
I love that. I think it speaks to just the importance, the value of one person in your life and how you can have an impact on other people's life. So then you went to college, and your degree is actually in management and leadership. What made you pick management and leadership for a degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. So originally, like I said, I was working in the stores, and when they said, yeah, you can go and apply for this, you can work at the corporate office, we'll help you get there, you just need your bachelor's degree. And I was sitting there like, well, this is where it ends. I don't have a bachelor's degree. And so locally there in Elgin, Illinois is Judson University, and they have an adults, bachelor's program that's nights and weekends, 2 years. And so I originally looked at a few different programs that were there local, some that were online. And I really liked the structure of what they had for their program. So it fit within my work schedule. I can work full time. Katie was working full time too. So it was like barely even saw each other, passing ships in the night for a lot of the days, with her working nights as a nurse and then me working and going to school. And I found their program. And as they were walking through, they're like, it's much more like, because you're executives going back to school, it's more set up like an MBA program where we teach you the fundamentals of how to be an entrepreneur, how to run a business, everything from your accounting practices all the way through to what the degree is, which is management and leadership, of how do you actually work with your employees to get the most out of them to have your business be successful, whether it's your personal business or whether you're at the corporate level and you have to manage a team. How does it actually all come together? Because you could be the strongest individual contributor coming out of college and be great. But if you can't tap into those employees that are with you and how to get the best out of your team, it all falls down, right? It's just a house of cards at that point. So how do you best beef that up? And in the program, because it was geared like that, I found myself then going back to work in a store and talking with other people that were similar to my age. Some are older, some are younger. And I found myself using those same skills like right away, right out of classes. So for me, it was just very instrumental in teaching me how to put those skills to work as soon as I learned them.
That sounds like a really valuable program. My doctorate was in
Yeah.
educational leadership, but sometimes I feel like I'm like relearning that lesson over and over and over again. So
Yep.
that's awesome that they taught it to people right out of the gate. So before we jump into Nike, because there's so much about what I want to ask you about in your current position.
Sure.
Do I remember correctly that there's a McLindsay tie? Is there a tie named after you?
Yeah. So when I did get the job at corporate, we went to I was working at Banana Republic already. So then my corporate job ended up being with Banana Republic, and they call it the triad. So I was in allocation at the time, and then my planner Jeff Toy was in planning, and then my merchandise counterpart was her name is Kelly, and so the three of us were the triad, and we would work really closely together. And we were in men's accessories, and so yeah, she did a lot of sourcing of where do we get the tie from. It ended up being a silk tie that they ended up sourcing from over in Europe. And then once they were coming up with different patterns and things, yeah, there was like a blue striped one that I really liked. And she also has the merchandise lead for that team. Gets to name a lot of the ties if we don't have the source that goes back to directly what Banana Republic wants to name them. And she's like, well, how about I just name this one the McLindsay plaid tie? And I was like, fantastic, that's great. So yeah, it ended up hitting the website, and that was kind of the first taste. And wow, what I'm doing here really transacts to straight into the store and straight online. So it was amazing.
That is really cool. Okay, so then we have this transition
Yeah.
into Nike. And again, as I remember too, like just following you
Mhm.
on social media, like it was always like Michael Jordan, it was always Nike. Would it be
Yep.
accurate that like you had this dream to work for Nike, or did that just kind of happen?
Um, I think I've had the dream to work for Nike or do something close to either Jordan Brand or even the Chicago Bulls for a long time. And I don't know if it's coming from where we come from or whatever instilled in that in me that like, yeah, that's a passion, but you could never make that a career. It just would never happen. So from the time that you're talking about being at Gap, which is like when I graduated was 2007, up until when I actually started work at Nike, which wasn't until 2016, there's a lot of roles in there of just like, hey, I got a raise here or a bump here or going to this other job to get other experience that I wanted. Never thinking, oh, I should just apply for Nike and go move out to Oregon and do that. And it never occurred to me because of, I think, my own pressure that I put on myself of like, maybe I'm just not as smart as the people that work for that amazing company. Maybe I don't have the skill set yet, and always just doubting myself. And it wasn't until we had Grace. And so when Grace was born in January 2016, Katie needed a break, needed to get out of the house. She wasn't quite back at work yet. So I was watching Grace and I was sitting there watching something about Jordan on TV, kind of just rocking her and saying, what am I doing? I'm turning 35 this year. I've went my whole life loving this brand and Jordan. Why have I never even seriously applied? And it just hit me right then that like I needed to actually go do it for myself. And I think Katie and a few of my other family members know that like I have actually applied for roles on Nike passively since I was 16. So
Wow.
every year around my birthday, I would always just apply for a role. I never had the degree for it. I never had anything that I should have had lined up for that. But I would always go on the website and be like, maybe they'll do that. Never taken it seriously. So it wasn't until that point that, and having the skill set and the confidence and also like know what that pathway looks like to talking to recruiters, using LinkedIn, using a lot of other sources, that I actually did it the right way this time and take it seriously. And it paid off. So.
Wow. Again, oh my gosh, there's so much just in that. Okay, because you talked about like you used to just like passively apply. And then you talked about, doing it the right way. And you briefly mentioned like talking to recruiters, LinkedIn. So if someone's listening and they have something similar that they're thinking, like, gosh, there's always been this company that I just love to go to work for. Like, what are some of the things that you can take a more active role in that application process? What would be some advice that you would give them?
Sure. Yeah, I'm doing that right now with I'll call them kids because, being 20 years younger than me or so, I guess I can call them that when you get close to 40. But there's some kids that work for Nike. They work in the stores and they have no idea how to get to the corporate level. So I've talked to HR at the right there on campus, and they said, look, if you want to mentor more people or do something like that, here's a full list of people that work in stores all over the country and want to come work here. You can talk to them about that journey. And that fits in with a lot of what I want to do in my career. So I said, yeah, sure. And that's what I talk to them about is I say, okay, what have you done so far in your career? What schooling do you have? What are you even doing in the stores? What do you love? What do you not love? Like, it's more about what their current expertise is and what they have up to now. And then you say, okay, well, why do you want to work at the corporate office? Is it because you're working at Nike now? Is it because you just think it'd be cool? Do you want the discount? Like, what are your real reasons versus like what you tell yourself today versus like, where do you want your career to go and where do you see that fit in? Because there's thousands and thousands of fantastic companies out there, both big and small. So does it actually fit with what they want in their career or for the rest of their life? Does it just fit right now? So we try and build out that full arc and that full timeline. And then we start to talk more about the specifics about, well, what do you want to do for that company? Because in that company, you don't look at everybody that applies and you don't hire like fanboys or people that are like, I just love the brand and I want to work for you. Like, the Chicago Bulls don't pull people out of the best fans out of the stands and say, yeah, go shoot the three, go win the game for us. No, you have to go through the proper channels, get on the team, put in the work. And even then you might not even get on the floor to play. So there's a lot of steps there. And so I try to do that with a lot of the kids that I'm talking to today.
So in your bio that you sent me, I love the bio, and I've noticed this. I don't know if this is a trend or not, but I've noticed this with a couple people lately that sometimes their bio reads a little bit more like a narrative, and it's really neat to read that. I think it gives you a good perspective of who people are. And you ended it with talking about your future aspirations, which I thought was really cool. You put out there that I want to be a VP at Nike. So talk to us a little bit about that. Why do you include that in your bio? And, what are some of the next steps for you?
Sure. I think through my whole career, no matter what, I've never, ever been satisfied. And that's hard to say when you look back and see the people that I work with, the companies, never, ever been satisfied with where I've at and always think I could do something better, which is a whole other thing to unpack probably. But because of that, I always say, well, if I always thought I could have done it better in the past, then where do I want to go in the future? And how can I do it better today or wake up tomorrow and start anew and do that again and just be a little bit better every day? Well, part of that is you got to know where you want to go in the future. So I always try and put it out there to say, well, this is what I want to do. And then usually when I end my days, I say, did I do anything at all that helps me get to that next step? If I didn't, do I change that goal that I have out in front of me? Or do I actually just wake up tomorrow and say, okay, now first thing tomorrow, I need to do something, even if it's small, that helps me get to that next role, whether it's a goal in front of me to get a new job, save up money, whatever that case might be. In this case, to be a VP at Nike, I've realized that a lot of the VPs at Nike that I've ran into are just amazing people. They deeply care about the people that work for them, the people on their teams. They are really deeply involved and believe that sport is what actually helps us all to get just a clearer mindset, to get the exercise that we need, to be healthier overall. We love watching sports on TV, so it helps bring together community. So there's a lot of thought there that goes into, look, what I'm doing is important, the people that I work with are important, and my actual job is important, and I want to continue that mindset. So for me, being a VP at Nike, just to throw that out there, I think that gives me the platform then to help bring a lot of that same excitement to not only my employees, but also hopefully that permeates out to a broader set of folks as well.
So with that mindset you were talking about that the VPs have, and I'm assuming just a lot of people that work at Nike with that sport, and you're very active, your family's very active. Talk about balance. I don't like the word balance, but like work-life fit for you, or how that's promoted at Nike.
Yep.
Like how do you maintain, one, staying fit, two,
Yep.
work, three, family? What's that look like?
Sure. I think, and today, of course, being with the virus what it is, and a lot of us working from home, it looks a lot different. But even on campus, when we're there, they have many, many different buildings that have places that you can go work out. They have basketball courts, they have tennis courts, They have a trail across the street that you can go run in. So there's all these different facilities that are available to you. And a lot of companies do that, but it means nothing unless they actually embrace the culture. And the good thing is Nike has that culture. So what they're saying to us is you make sport a daily habit. So they really do want you to block out time in your calendar, whether it's in the morning, afternoon, whatever works for you. Block out time, go for a run. Go get, lift some weights, go do something for yourself. Even if it's just get outside and go for a walk around Lake Nike, do the half-mile loop and come back, and then just feel a little bit more refreshed, feel better that you did something for yourself. And then you come back to work, right? So we all need those breaks. And a lot of people don't bake them in. Maybe they don't want to, maybe they don't feel like they have the time. But when you have that overarching structure of the company actually telling you, no, let's make sport a daily habit. We expect our consumers to do that. We should be doing that as well. And that also gives us selfishly, that gives us some time to wear the product, try it out. Are we happy with it? Have our feedback and buy-in for that. And I think overall, just having that be part of the culture means a lot to saying, no, I can take an hour for myself and not feel bad about it, because that's what we all should be doing. And sometimes you're the person on the team that leads that, and you take the hour for yourself and then other people follows. But if I don't do that personally, I know that I will wake up and work at 6 a.m. and then I'll find myself still working at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night and saying, I didn't get a run in today and I feel even worse. So I should have just taken that time for myself.
Yeah, that's fantastic that they encourage that. It completely makes sense, the kind of company that they are.
Yep.
So, one more Nike specific question, but I think that you've had some pretty cool run-ins with people. So, tell us at least one story about a cool experience that you've had at Nike running to somebody.
Yeah, I've ran into a lot of athletes, because we do athletes, performers, and things like that are a part of the Jordan brand, or maybe they just are invited on campus for something. I've ran into quite a bit, from LeBron James on my first day. I ran into Kevin Durant when I was running around the campus just on a jog in the afternoon. DJ Khaled, a lot. I think my favorite though, even more so than sitting in a meeting with MJ himself, I think my favorite might have been actually the conversation with Carmelo Anthony, because he was there helping to have a conversation about some of the new youngest athletes that we have joining the brand. And he was just walking the floor and kind of just saying hi to all of us at our desks. So it's like I'm sitting there really deep in thought, got dual screens, really deep in trying to build out some VLOOKUPs and things to make this report, and Excel, just totally just in, headphones in, locked in. And I look up and I see him walking up, and I was like, oh my gosh, totally shocked, and take out the headphones and say hi to him. And he's like, what are you doing? And he kind of looked at my screens and he's like, I don't want any part of that. I don't even know what you're doing. He's like, what's your function? What do you do? I was like, oh, it's kind of like demand planning. I just started to talk about that. He's like, wait, that's a job? What is that? So I sat there for 15 minutes just talking to him about well, when you have a new shoe come out, how many do you even make? How many styles are you going to have? How many colors are you going to have for this season? What months do they come out? And do you want them only on Nike.com, or do you want them to be worldwide? Do you want them to be in Foot Lockers, Finish Lines, things like that? Are we going to promote it on the website? Are we going to promote it on different social medias? Are you going to wear it during special games? You need somebody that actually can take all of that data, compile it, and build the right amount of units to satisfy the consumer demand. He's like, that's a job? That's how we make your shoe, man. That's one of the steps, but there's hundreds of people, of course, in the pipeline of how to make something happen. And that's, my little cog in the wheel, so to speak, of hey, this is what I do. And it just, the fact that he was blown away that, wait, that's a job and that's what you do. And it was just amazing for him to spend the time, not only just to actually be invested in what I do, but to stop himself and say, I don't know that. So teach me what that is. And a lot of people might be like, oh yeah, I know. Yep. Good to see you, and walk away. And he did the opposite. And that's why I've seen a lot of the athletes be there, is they'll stop and talk to you, but also they know when they don't know something and they want to be educated about it. And so him doing that meant a lot to me.
What a cool story that is, and what a cool job that you have. So another question I want to ask you, we talked about this a little bit over email, but you've been in positions where you've been a manager of people, and then you've been in positions where you've been an individual contributor. Talk a little bit about the difference. What are some of the advantages or disadvantages between the two, between managing people or serving in a role where you're just the individual contributor?
Yeah, and for my arc, it's been interesting to go from being individual contributor in the stores years ago to finally being a manager of people in a stores, then going back to individual contributor at a corporate level for a while, then being a manager at a corporate level, and now coming into Nike, having to take a slight bump down just to get in the door to be an individual contributor again. So I've kind of done the back and forth between that. And because I've done that, I've learned a lot about here's how you have to show up as a leader versus here's how you organize your day, here's how you show up as an individual contributor. So currently as an individual contributor, you are the CEO of your business. You have to know your business in and out. You have to know the tools that you need, the different people that you have to utilize in order to get the job done. And it's a lot about the relationships there in order to kind of put the pieces together. Like I said, in my role, what I was talking to Carmelo about, it's you're one piece of this huge puzzle that gets put together. And Ray Allen talked about this a little bit as well. He looked at the huge board that was behind him, like huge screen that we were doing something. And then he held up one small piece of paper and it was like probably a 50th of what the screen size was. And he's like, I cannot control everything that goes on in that screen, but if I control this small piece, this piece of paper, if I know everything here and I show up and I do this, I've done my part, and hopefully that helps everybody else fill in the gaps, right? So as an individual contributor, knowing your job in and out, learning it, knowing when to say you don't know something and getting the right help is huge. And if you take that mentality to a leadership role and you have a team, then you're like, okay, I need to make sure each one of them on my team feels comfortable in their role, that they know everything they need to get their job done. And then I am the person that kind of blocks and tackles, that makes sure that nothing stands in their way from doing that. But I also need to make the extra effort of saying, now, on top of that, where do those folks want to go in their career? Do they want to stay in that role for the next 20 years and retire? Great. So how do I continue to make that a good fit for them and keep challenging them when they need it and back off because they know the role and just let them do their daily job? And other people might need a lot more hand-holding. And other people might say, this is not even right for me and I'm in the wrong role. Well, how do we then help them do that? Help them find something else. Maybe it's not even with this company. So you have to then take a complete shift and say, how do I best look at my team? And is it the right fit for what I want to do? One of the analogies that I use there is you have Michael Jordan, but you also have Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson cannot step on the court and do what Jordan does. And conversely, Jordan's even said, I'm not a good coach because I want to be out there to take the shot. I can't like train and get in the heads of all these guys to help them prepare them. That's just not how I'm wired. It's not what I do. So a lot of leadership, a little bit is kind of innate to who you are as a person, but much of it is learned. And so when you're in those different leadership roles, you're almost relearning based on what your team is, what their skill set is, what they bring to the table, what they want to do next, and how to fit all those personalities together to make, at the end of the day, the job actually come to life and be successful.
What a great response. And usually I end with the question of, what do you know for sure about leadership? But I think that that's a perfect ending to the show. And Josh, I appreciate you being here. And again, it's truly been a pleasure to watch your career. And I'll look forward to you being a VP at Nike. And then we can, show this podcast again and say, hey, look, this was Josh back in the day before he was a VP. But again, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Absolutely. Great. It was great to connect with you again and kind of share a bit of my experience with everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Supporting Leaders podcast. For more on supporting leaders, go to www.supportingleaders.org. Here you'll find links to the YouTube versions of our interviews and links to the podcast. You'll also find articles on leadership. To join in on the conversation, find the Supporting Leaders group on Facebook and find us on Instagram at Supporting Leaders.